Good evening and welcome to another exciting edition of the TreeStuff educational webinar. Tonight, our pal Nick Araya is back for the second installment of the business of the tree care business. Nick is an ISA board certified master arborist and owner of Tree Care LA. He'll be discussing air spade work, tech in the tree care business, selling quality tree care, and much more. Following the webinar, there will be a quiz. Those who score 16 out of 20 will earn 2 CEUs from ISA. We'll have the link in the comments section and post it on our Facebook page. And Nick will be answering questions, so get them ready. So without further delay, please welcome all the way from LA, Mr. Nick Araya. Good evening and welcome to another exciting edition.
What is up, everybody? Welcome from El Segundo, California. I think we're ready to go. I'm looking at the live feed over here and trying to make sure everything's good. But so before we get started, I have to say hi, my name is Nick. I know a lot of you folks know me, some of you don't. I want to start by saying I have a little bit of a cold right now. So you might hear me sniffling or coughing, and sometimes it tickles my nose and it makes my eyes water. It doesn't mean that I'm crying because I'm sad. I'm very happy to be doing this today. So welcome to part 2 of the ABCs of the Tree Care Business webinar. Today we're going to be talking about a few things. Before we get started, I want to give you a little recap on my company. I know a lot of you know about my company because people like to follow me on Instagram and Facebook and all that, but we are, I view us as a very small company, but we used to be super small. We've been around for 8 years. We have 11 employees. We have way too many certified arborists for a company of this size. I know companies that are 5 or 10 times the size as our company and don't have as many certified arborists as we have. And we have 2 more guys that I think will be certified arborists by the end of this year, so I'm really excited about that. We focus on residential tree care. We do have a few HOA and a few other commercial clients and some city contracts that we do as well, but they're not city tree pruning contracts. They tend to be consulting or other specialty things. So what are we going to talk about today? The focus is it's really about business, not necessarily tree care, but we're going to merge the 2 of them together because that's what I think is essential in being an arborist business person. We're going to be talking about what are new services that you can incorporate into your company, and how do you incorporate them into your company, and then the most important part in a way is how do you determine pricing, and then how do you sell those new services. We'll talk a little bit about some technology things that you can use to help you sell those services. And then we're going to spend a lot of time using the air spade as an example of how we have incorporated a new service into our company. And this is going to have a twofold benefit for people that are watching this webinar. One, it'll help you to see the examples of how, from the business aspect, how you can make more money doing a new service. But 2, if you've been thinking about doing air spade work specifically, we're going to go into the details about what products we have, what are the specific supplies that we have for the air spade, what compressor do we use, and all that kind of stuff. So you'll also be getting the actual arborist side of things. So let's go ahead and get started. So setting yourself apart, everything, the focus of these 3 webinars that we're doing about business, I think can be summarized in setting yourself apart. There are tons, hundreds, thousands of tree service companies across the United States. And in order to get your fair share of the work, you really have to show everyone that you're not just a tree cutting company. You do that too, but you can do so much more than that. And so that's what we're going to be focusing on. Let's get started on selling and pricing. when we do sales, there are two components to it, two parts about it that are important to a business owner. Number one is, what does it do to our bottom line? What does it do to our workflow? Let's look at a couple of these examples here. First of all, if you come up with a new service, you now have a new revenue stream that's feeding your bottom line. And you might have a client that has a tree, maybe it's failing and has some issues, and everyone else just wants to cut it down. If you can provide a service that client wants and help them save that tree, you are going to walk away empty-handed. You might walk away with a job out of that one. Number two, and I think this is really essential to being a good arborist business owner, new work trains you and your company to constantly learn and adapt. If you are deadwooding trees all the time, you can become pigeonholed into that. You can become really good at it. But when you decide, hey, let's start cabling trees, for example, you have to now figure out, okay, what are the trees we're going to cable? Are we going to use dynamic cable, or are we going to use steel cable? Okay, we're using steel. Are we going to use rig guy, or are we going to use preformed cable wraps? And your company, your team has to make these decisions. They have to learn how to do it all. And that keeps you on the edge. Did you guys see a turtle? I could have sworn I just saw a turtle. Anyways, so that's really important to know that your team, not just you as an individual, but your whole team, your whole company is ready to learn and implement, sometimes on the fly. So new work, as a company owner, I've seen this, that new work helps to keep the crew, I'm calling it happy, but they might not be happy to do trunk injections all day long, but at the end of the day, you're adding a new skill set to each of your employees, which is important. They're constantly learning more. It is more relaxing on their body to constantly be doing different things. Removing big trees can be hard work, especially if you don't have heavy machinery to help you do it. So when we're doing tree inspection days, cabling, or trunk injections, that is a physical break to the backs of the guys that are out there, or I should say the people that are out there doing the work. And then this is what it's all about. You're adding these new skills. You're showing everyone that you're not just out there to cut the trees, and everyone around your community starts seeing, hey, call this company because they can do that other thing that you're looking for right now. And those calls will start to come to you. Now, as an arborist, it looks a little funny there, but it should say sales as an arborist. I'm hoping it looks good on your end. There are other important things that this will help you do. Number one is, as an arborist, we're here to preserve trees. Removal isn't always the best option. Sometimes it is, but any tree removal company can take the tree out. If they're looking for an arborist, there's a really good chance they want to save the tree. So naturally that would lead to pruning, but honestly, pruning also isn't always the best option. This tree in the picture right here is a really old California coast live oak. It's giant, it's risky, it's got a ton of cables in it, and it has a ton of dieback. If we go up and start pruning this tree, chances are it will continue to die back more. So we were able to do some good things for this tree because we brought more to the table than removal and pruning. We were able to do vertical mulching, which we'll go into detail later, root crown excavation, some cabling, and some canopy inspections. And then we're going to come back later and do some other more detailed trunk inspections. And that's all additional revenue for our company. So these other options, these other services that you can provide are where a true arborist company can really shine. If you're doing tree removal and you have 5 companies that are all safe and they're all nice people, the job is going to go to the cheapest company. When we're talking about preserving trees, the client has a lot more at stake, and they're going to start looking at who would actually do the job the best, who is more affordable, but who also makes them feel better about the approach that they're going to take in managing the long-term care of this tree. Okay, so you have to sell to your strengths. First of all, I have this nice 3-step program on how to incorporate new services into your company. And step number 1, find ways that you can improve the trees. Think of services that you can provide. Maybe that's trunk injections or cabling. Maybe it's something else that I don't even know about. Once you figured out what those things are, determine what you're going to charge. And we'll go into detail about what that actually is. And then once you know what the services are and what the price is, then it's time to get out there and start selling. So let's go into detail on some of these things. What are the ways that you can improve trees? All right, I think we are back. I'm not sure where I lost you. I think we're queued back to the right spot, looking at the yellow leaf slide here. So I'm going to keep going. I have the TreeStuff headquarters folks in my ear on the Bluetooth, and they'll let me know if anything bad happens. So we're going to pick up where we left off. Figuring out what the services that you are going to provide. In my service area, with the experience that I have, here's a list of some of the things that we added. And this is stuff that if any arborist walked with me around and said, well, what about that problem over there? I could say, yeah, we can fix that. And we added it to the list. And maybe there were some things we couldn't fix because the equipment was too expensive or the actual solution wasn't really known. So, through trial and error and a few other things, this is what we settled on. You might look at this list and go, I don't want to have nothing to do with fruit trees. I don't want the liability of dealing with cables. I don't want to write a report. And you're going to have to come up with your own list. I could walk with you in your area and I'd say, well, I noticed that all of this specific tree of this species has this particular problem. Let's figure that out and see what is actually going on. And we might find out it's a disease or a fungus that's affecting the tree, and maybe there's a treatment for that. And now you can be the person running around your town telling everyone, hey, stop cutting down your such and such trees. There's another option and I can help you save them. So you have to figure out what your things are. Get out a piece of paper and a pencil and write down some ideas. And there's the obvious ones, but there's also some that maybe aren't that obvious. And like the one at the bottom, deneedling, I've talked about that before in other webinars and presentations. We're going to look at that more in detail later. And that's one where I know there aren't very many people doing it, and so we can charge a premium for it. Okay, so you figure out what those services are. Now you have to figure out what you're going to charge people. And so there are a few things that you're going to have to take into account. Obviously, you're going to start with T&M, time and materials. Let's say you're going to cable a tree and you figured it out, you've asked around, and you're looking at 1 to maybe 2 hours to actually install the cable, more at the beginning, and it gets faster as you get better at it. You can do the math on exactly how many feet of cable you'll need and what hardware you'll need. That'll give you a cost. And you might end up somewhere between $200 to account for an hour and a half of time and the hardware that you'll need. But there's more to it than just that. I'll call it R&D, research and design, and that is, we could think of this as what do you put into it up front before you even install your first cable to figure out A, if this is something you want to do, and B, how are you going to actually do it? I used the example before, deciding if you're going to start with dynamic cable or steel cable. That's work that you're doing for your clients, and you do need to factor that in. So that doesn't mean you get to charge the first person $5,000 because you added a bunch of extra time up front, but you might want to add another $25 or $50 to make up for the fact that you have invested a lot of your time. There's another thing you have to put into this. Specialized services often include specialized tools. You can't do trunk injections without trunk injection equipment. And trunk injection equipment costs money. Obviously, you have time and materials. If you're leaving $75 worth of triage in the tree, you have to factor that in. But you're also buying a $1,000 or $2,000 trunk injection system that you have to kind of partial that out. And it's not just the cost of that system. We do spend a lot of time cleaning the equipment, having the guys maintain it, swapping out the little O-rings, training people when we have new guys, training them on how to clean it and how to use it. And you have to factor that in. So for a cable, it could be as simple as we use the battery-powered rechargeable drills to drill the holes to put the cable through. And believe it or not, you have to train guys how to use the actual drill. There's a bunch of switches on there, and if they have it set to hammer drill mode while you're trying to drill a hole in the tree, though it doesn't do a good job. So, and those drills, we're asking a lot to drill sometimes a 24-inch diameter hole or a 4-foot length hole, excuse me. Sometimes we have to replace those drills, and we just kind of throw them away and get a new one. We factor that into the cost of the cable. So time and materials, research and design, and then maintaining the specialized tools, that $200 cable starts to look more like a $400 cable or something along that. Obviously, you figure out your own numbers for your service area. Then the final thing that I think you really have to take into account is if you're doing a specialty service, there's a really good chance that you're the only one or one of a very small handful of crews in your service area that can provide that. And just that alone, by supply and demand, it allows you to add a premium on top of it. And I think a really good example in my company is the Alpine Magnum stump grinder. I kind of hate that machine. It's not fun to use by any means, but we do stumps that no one else can get to with any other machine. And sometimes we'll do a little tiny stump this big around, and we'll charge $400 for it. And it's not because we're taking advantage of the people. It's because A, we know that we have to use a crummy, tiny, almost hand-powered stump grinder that's heavy to lug around. There's almost nothing automatic about it. But B, they can't just call the next guy and get it done for the half price, because the next guy has a big, much more motorized stump grinder that can't access it. So, you know, maybe add another $25 or $50 onto it to compensate you for the fact that you've set yourself up to do the things that no one else can do. All right, so once you figured out what you're gonna do and you think you have your pricing more or less figured out, you have to find your target. And there are two targets I want you to consider. One of them is the client. Who's going to buy this? Everyone can't afford to inject all of their trees to protect them from bark beetles. So you have to find the people that can afford it. And then you have to find the people that can afford it and want to do it. Some people could care less if their tree dies from bark beetles. So you're gonna be weeding those people out as you're talking with them. But the other thing you have to target is the actual ID of the tree. Something like co-dominant stems can happen with almost every tree species. But bark beetles are more specific to certain types of trees. In our area, we have pine bark beetles. We have a few different kinds of them, and they don't all affect all pines. So if I have a sales guy on my crew that we want them to start looking to, like, hey, you need to be selling more pine injection, we know how much an average sales guy should be selling, and you're selling 0, so we have to train them. We're not looking for Torrey pines because they usually in our area don't get bark beetles. We want you looking for Canary Island pines and Italian stone pines. Those are our top 2 candidates, sometimes Aleppo pines as well. And so you need to know how to identify those trees. And a lot of arborists in Los Angeles are really bad at identifying pine trees. And if you don't know how to identify maybe the top 5 pines in LA, you will not be able to know how to sell trunk injections to protect those trees from bark beetles. So find out the problems that are specific to certain tree species and then get really good at identifying them. Once you know your targets, you have to know what your talking points are. In your head, you might have it all there, but you have to clean it up so you can present it really well to the client so you look like a professional. It doesn't matter if it's your first time and it's your first trunk injection job. If you look like a professional and you do the things that a professional would be doing, and an experienced, seasoned professional, then you are a professional. You're using good arborist knowledge and you're providing good services to help the client save their tree. So a really good example is Italian stone pines. They get, in our area, they get a beetle called Ips beetle. It's a type of a bark beetle. And I can tell by looking at the canopy or maybe looking at some of the neighboring trees, and I can tell a client when I'm in their driveway, hey, do you see that tree way over there? I bet if we walk up to the base of that tree, we're gonna see little oval shaped holes that are about a 1/4 inch in diameter with little shavings coming out of them, long shavings that look like Nabisco shredded wheat. That's what I always tell them. And I can see the holes from really far away, but you probably couldn't your first time. But once I walk you up to them, it really does stand out. So in their driveway, I can say, that's what I think we're gonna find when we walk over there. And then we walk over there, and because I have that experience and I'm very confident in what I'm telling them, when we get close to it, sure enough, we see those tiny little holes, and I say, look, this tree, I think it might already be dead. It looks really bad, but you have 3 more of these trees that look really good. Soon this tree is going to completely die and all the bark beetles are going to leave and they're going to be looking for a new host. We need to inject your next 3 trees to help you protect it. Those are the talking points that I share to help people preserve their Italian stone pines. And injecting stone pines are big money because they'll have 60-inch diameter trunks. And if you're charging a price per inch to inject a tree, even if it's $5 an inch, times that by 60, and that's a lot of money. We charge a lot more than $5 an inch to inject an Italian stone pine, or any tree with bark beetles. So, so know your talking points so that you sound professional, and then you present the price to them. And this is always a shocker for people because I think everyone wants trunk injections, for example, to be $35 or $75. They don't understand that a bottle of triage costs $500 or whatever it costs. So I share that price with them, maybe not exactly, maybe I haven't taken the DBH, but I give them that price range and very quickly go into focusing on reminding them about the benefits of the tree. Look, we might have lost this one tree right here, but you have 3 more trees that are providing shade to your whole house, and we might lose all 3 of those trees, which means you're gonna lose your shade and you're gonna lose the beauty that you have in your property. Or you go directly to the wallet and you say, look, that tree might be $600 to inject it, but it's going to be $3,000 to take it out. Or in the case of a really big Italian stone pine, it could be $6,000 to take it out. So I know it sucks to have to pay $600 to inject it, but it's a lot better than the alternative. And I share that with them, but then I remind them, Karina calls it being a tree cheerleader, and it really does help drive the point home and establish you as being someone who's generally interested in their tree when you enthusiastically remind them not the benefits of trees, but the benefits of their tree. That one branch right there is so cool. I love how you have that swing hanging off of it. I can tell you guys enjoy the tree because the lawn underneath it is worn. You guys come under here, you play under this tree. It looks like your kids are climbing up the bottom branches. I can see the bark is falling off a little bit, and that's cool that you guys are coming to this tree. Whatever the benefits are of that specific tree, and through the conversation, I will have picked up some things that they love about the tree, and I share that with them, remind them of it, because they really need to believe you, but they need to believe in their heart that they're doing the right thing before they pay hundreds or sometimes thousands of dollars. Sometimes we have clients with 20 Canary Island pines that all need to be injected, and it'll be $6,000 or more to inject all those trees. And they need to believe in me, they need to believe in the product, and they need to believe in themselves that they're making the right decision before they're going to be comfortable and happy writing a $6,000 check out to me so that we can provide this service to them. That's basically the plan. Figure out what your services are, figure out what you're going to charge, and then start selling it. The other thing I want you to keep in mind is don't be overwhelmed by it, and don't be afraid to undershoot it. When we started doing trunk injections, we were doing them for way too cheap. And I was being really idealistic, like, what, it's about 15 minutes to inject a tree. We're putting $30 worth of chemical in there. So I think let's charge $100 for this tree. And we started looking at it after a while, and we realized, geez, we're kind of breaking even on this, or we might be losing a little bit of money. So then we started upping the price, and we made it, we have our formula really defined for trunk injections, to use that example. We charge a upfront cost just to have the crew show up to inject the tree, and then depending on what product we're putting in it, we charge a per inch cost. The bigger the tree, the more chemical is going in, the higher the cost goes. And then depending on the tree species and the time of year, there's an added premium on what our expected uptake time is, because I'm paying my employees hourly. So once they put everything in, if it's just one tree, there's nothing left for them to do. So they honestly get paid to sit around on their phone while everything uptakes. So once we figured all that out, we upped the price a little bit. Our cabling costs up front, we were doing cables for like $75 each. And I thought it was kind of good. I kind of convinced myself that, hey, look, we're helping the tree, and we made other money on other parts of the property, and we're establishing ourselves as professionals. Now we have tree cabling down to a science. I know exactly how much it's going to cost us, and I can nail down to within a few minutes how long it's going to take our crew to set it up. So you start putting it in. Don't let yourself get overwhelmed. Start doing it. Look at any loss of money as you paying to take a class in how to sell this product. And that's how I look at it. Like, okay, we lost money, but honestly, I would have paid someone $500 to teach me about this. And I basically just paid myself $500 to teach me about this. So I think we'll leave it at that. Let me throw it out to you guys. Put in the comments if you have questions about this concept of selling new products and maybe some new ideas. And I'll ask Jake and Kel, I know you guys are listening, do we need to stop for any questions, or should we go into the next section? Okay, we're gonna full steam ahead to the next section. Okay, once you have figured out, I do need to add one thing. There's a risk to this. When you remove a tree, the tree problem goes away. Whether it was, we don't like the mess that it makes, we hate the acorns falling on our roof, or, oh, it's so scary, it's gonna come and kill us. If you make the decision, along with the client, to retain the tree, you are making the decision to also retain the risk and retain the need to manage that tree. And that management means that they're gonna have to pay money, they're gonna have to do cleanup, and if we don't err too much on the side of caution, or enough on the side of caution, there could be limb failures or something like that. So you want to walk them through that and help them to understand. But again, remind them, be that tree cheerleader to show them that there are benefits to this tree. And you do want them to keep the tree, because as a business owner, you'll make a lot more money off that tree the longer it exists. And the longer that tree exists, the more you're going to strengthen the relationship with that client. And when the day comes that you do need to remove it, there's a greater likelihood that you're going to be the one to get that job anyways. So the value of the client relationship is hard to put a number on, but it's what keeps my business afloat. Okay, cool. Let's talk a little bit about technology, and it's not gonna be the ways you think. Yeah, we use a drone sometimes to set lines up in palm trees, or in palms. We use it to do inspections, aerial inspections, which is super cool. I have this super $300 laser that I use in all my consults, and it actually speeds up the consult and makes it very quick. You need to get a good green laser pointer. I have that blank empty line there because there's all these other things we could talk about. Sonic tomography testing to determine the remaining solid wood in the trunk of the tree. But I want to talk about something that I think is even more valuable than a resistograph or something like that, and that is CRM software. Jobber, Joist, you can use QuickBooks, Salesforce is another one. There's tons of them. Some of them are free, but they do the obvious things like helping you book all your appointments and making sure that you are invoicing the right amounts and remembering to send the quote to the client. But they also do something else that I don't think they really advertise when you look into the benefits of the CRM softwares. CRM, by the way, and you might want to remember this, stands for Client Relationship Management Software. And a lot of people think about it as invoicing and calendar, but it's relationship management software. And through our CRM, we use Jobber at our company, and I know a lot of you know that already. We are able to really strengthen the relationship with our clients. When I pull up to a consultation with a client that maybe I've met with them 3 or 4 times, I'm not going to remember everything about them, but I can pull up their account in their profile page in Jobber, and I can very quickly see, oh yeah, we've been deadwooding this pine tree a lot over the past few years, excuse me. And we know the tree is declining. So up front, right when I knock on the door, they open it up. I can say, hi, Mrs. Johnson, how's your pine tree looking? Because I know that's on the forefront of her mind. I can remind them, it has been 2 years since we injected your tree, and triage is recommended to be re-injected every other year. So we have that documented. There's no wondering what the history of it was, because we have every line item in there. And when I bring that up, when the client when they ask me a question and I answer it with confidence that yes, your tree did flower really well last year because I have that in my notes, or I have a picture that I took, that strengthens that relationship between me and the client. And it's almost like they're really having a relationship with Jobber, and they're just doing that through me. But it really helps us. I use my lovely iPhone here to take pictures of every property I go to now. I take a lot of pictures. I have years of photos on my phone or in the cloud, and I'll be on a property and a client will say, that tree doesn't look that good. What's going on? It used to look really good. And I can say, well, in fact, here's what it looked like last year, and it's just as bad as it was last year. And that helps them to remember, oh wow, we did actually have this exact same talk, and I recommended that you remove that tree last year, and now it's been a full year and it looks a little bit worse. I really need you to consider removing that tree, or maybe doing a treatment that we talked about to preserve that tree. So let's use air spading as a big example. We're going to talk a lot about air spade work, and I said at the beginning, it's not, I'm not technically here to promote to you that you should get an air spade. I think that there's a lot of lessons that can be learned in how we've implemented the air spade in our company that will help you implement whatever you decide to do, if it's cabling, trunk injection, or something else that I don't even know about. So let's get started. First, what the heck is an air spade? First of all, air spade is a trademarked term. It's a brand name. It's kind of, I think it's like saying Kleenex or Band-Aid. It's an air-powered soil excavation tool. You could call it a pneumatic excavation tool. There's two reasons why we're going to focus on the air spade. One, it's the most readily available pneumatic excavation tool on the market. There's another one called the Supersonic Air Knife that's really cool, but it comes from a really small specialty company, and it can sometimes, I think, be a challenge to get in touch with them to order it. This is something you can go online and you can order it today and have it in a few days. The other reason why we're going to focus on this one is I know TreeStuff sells it, so you can go right on their website, exactly, and you can get it straight from them. So, all right, so what does it actually consist of? It isn't all that mystical. There is a handle with a trigger on it, and you pull the trigger and air shoots out the end. You hook this thing up to a 185 CFM tow behind air compressor. Those are the ones that are most readily available at rental yards all across the country. It's what gets used for jackhammers and stuff like that. So they're pretty easy to get a hold of. All that air gets funneled into the air spade, and it comes out down at the very bottom. You can see the supersonic nozzle. The supersonic nozzle is just kind of like a pinpoint of air. And if you, I explain it to our clients, imagine a water gun. You fill the tank up and then the water comes out a really tiny stream. And the same thing is happening here with the air. So the other thing that's really important is the adjustable dirt shield. It doesn't look like much, it's just this little funnel thing. It deflects a lot of the soil that's shooting back up at you, and if it ever comes off and you try to use the air spade, you'll learn how important that tiny little plastic is. Here is our setup at our shop. That blue trailer right there is our 185 CFM air compressor. You can buy them, you can rent them at rental yards for $100 to $200 a day around the country. We were losing a lot of time as a company sending our guys to the rental yard, which is literally right down the street, but they would spend a lot of time there in line or waiting while the other employees are hooking things up. And as a company owner, I was getting agitated where half the crew would pull up at the job site with the air spade in their hand, ready to work, but we don't have any air to hook up to it. So I eventually broke down and bought brand new, top of the line air compressor. And we spent a lot of money on it. It was close to $20,000. I'm not really good at fixing diesel engines. I know you can buy used really good air compressors for maybe $5,000 to $6,000. But I also knew that might lead to downtime on my job site. We use our air spade basically every single week, sometimes multiple times a week. If you look on the right of the photo, we have 2 of them, and sometimes we have both of them running. And we're getting to the point where sometimes we're going to rent a compressor and have one that we're using from ourselves. That yellow pile of what look like water hoses, those are the air hoses. We have 500 or 600 feet of it. You don't need that many. Most properties, we're only using 100 feet of it. If you live in an urban environment, most properties aren't even that big. If you're in a rural environment, there's a really good chance that you can drive the compressor really close to the tree that you're working on. So, so in this photo, we have the compressor and the hoses on the left. We have the 2 air spades on the right. And then in the middle, we have all the supplies that we use for vertical mulching. In the back, you can see some other things. So let's ignore that for a second. We'll go more into detail on those, on the supplies. Let's look at what comes with the air spade itself. This is our 2 cases. The bottom one's the old one and the top one's the new one. It's got the handle, the barrel, the nozzle, the 45-degree angle is really useful if you're doing root crown excavations. But if you're doing vertical mulching, you have to drill straight holes into the ground. So we don't use the 45 for that. And then what doesn't come with the kit, and what you're seeing with that red arrow, is anti-seizing compound. It's basically thread lube. We use the Loctite brand. We have 1 bottle. We bought our first air spade like 7 years ago, and 1 bottle, we haven't even gone halfway through it. So don't worry about the price. It's like 20 bucks for the bottle. It lasts forever. There is a ton of heat that's generated inside the tube. When you're using the air spade, you can feel it building up in your hands. That heat can, I don't want to say it welds the metal together, but it does something that can make the threads really bond to themselves. And if you look closely, you will notice that in the top air spade, the brand new one, the barrel at the top looks shorter than the bottom air spade. And the reason for that is under the red arrow on the old barrel, there's an attachment at the end that is bonded shut. You cannot undo it. We've tried everything, big pipe wrenches and all that. And that's because one day somebody forgot to put the thread, the anti-seizing thread lubricant on. So anyways, pro tip, use thread lube so you'll always be able to take the parts apart. For our old one, it's not a big deal because it's the straight piece that got threaded on. If it was that 45-degree angle piece, we'd kind of be screwed because we use it a lot for vertical mulching, and you can't do vertical mulching with the 45-degree angle on there. So we cut a piece of foam, it fits perfectly right there, and it's always ready for the team. One final thing, go back real quick. One final thing about the air spade device itself. Hold on. Okay. It is totally possible, and there are a ton of recipes to create your own homemade pneumatic excavation tool. They are, oh, everybody can hear? Hi. Since everyone can hear about the homemade air spades. I've seen it, I know they work, they do a great job. there is a liability involved. The one big thing that the air spade, the off-the-shelf air spade has, is the trigger handle. If you drop the device, it will turn off. You need to have your hand on the device for the air to be coming out. If you're using any homemade version that I've seen, it doesn't have what's called, what people call a dead man grip, where if the device falls, the air will keep coming out. So that doesn't mean it won't work, but for me, as an employer of a company with employees where liability is involved, if we were to make our own pneumatic digging tool and something bad happened, that all comes back to me. The way it is right now, we bought something off the shelf and we're using it as per the manufacturer's recommendation. I know if my little lawyer was sitting right here on my shoulder, he would say, do not tell them about the homemade versions. But anyone that Googles it, you're gonna find it really easy, and the money is hard to deny. But remember that there is a risk involved, and tread wisely, I guess we can say. So, okay, let's go to the next slide here. Let's start talking about exactly what you can do with the air spade. One of the amazing things about it is the tool has a ton of uses, and it's almost like leveling up in a video game. I paid some money, I saved up some money, and I went to the store and I paid some money and got the air spade, and then it said, congratulations, you have leveled up to air spade. But at the beginning, you can only do level 1 air spade stuff because you don't even know what all the things are. So level 1 really, I think, is root collar excavations or root crown excavations. Soil on trunks is bad. This is Arborist 101. If you don't know it, just believe me on it, Google it afterwards. You don't want soil piling up on the trunks of trees. On the East Coast and the Midwest especially, mulch volcanoes are a huge, it's like a cultural thing. They're everywhere out there, and it's really bad for the trees when you see the mulch piled up 18 inches or more on the trunk of the tree. In Los Angeles, we get a lot of construction happening and grade changes. And the other thing we see a lot, which I think is weird, is properties change hands a lot. And every time the property changes hand, the new homeowner wants it to look all fresh and cool. So they'll have a new layer of sod laid down. And laying sod over a lawn is almost like putting a new shingle roof over the old shingles. You can totally do it, it's fine. The lawn doesn't care. But now you have a tree trying to live under that. And we've been at properties where the grade is 10 inches higher than the root flare of the tree, and we start digging down and we see layer upon layer upon layer of sod piled up over the lawn. And it causes a whole host of problems to the trees. And we won't go into detail on that because it could take a whole time. We could do a whole webinar just on soil issues, but I will say it causes fungal issues, and it slows down the flow of nutrients and water getting up into the canopy, and that leads to an unhealthier tree. It also encourages stem girdling roots. So whenever we see a tree where we can't see the root flare, Arborist 101 is to make that root flare visible. I don't care if your tree is healthy or not. If I can't see the root flare, I'm gonna recommend that we bring the air spade out there and make it visible. Now that I own my own air spade, I can do this for a lot cheaper. We'll do a medium-sized, maybe like a 20-inch diameter tree. We'll do it for a couple $100. It's not a ton of money. You could do this by hand, and lots of people do it by hand. We're looking at it as production mode. Jake, can you still see me? We're getting some comments on Facebook that you can't. Hey, Jake, I can't hear you right now. Okay. I'm just making sure here. You're still clear? Okay, I'm gonna keep going. So one of the things we've learned in doing root collar excavations, using the air spade is way faster. It's so much faster than doing it by hand. And doing it by hand requires an extreme level of care because you're using digging tools. You're using a shovel, maybe a mini pickaxe, like a hand-sized pickaxe, trowels and cultivators, maybe some brushes and things like that. But you don't know where the root flare is and what's going on under there. So it's really easy to screw up the base of a tree if you don't have using the air spade. And I know it happened all the time when we were doing them by hand. So we're able to do them faster, which makes it cheaper for us. And we're able to do them better, which makes us better arborists. One of the risks that we found is we could come up with a ratio of like, for every inch diameter of the tree, we increase the price of the root collar excavation. And what we learned is that sometimes there are girdling roots down there that you didn't think you were gonna find. And so now we factor in, I think of it like an insurance program. If I'm charging $175 for the root collar excavation itself, I'm gonna actually bill it at $200, knowing that every once in a while, we're gonna uncover these massive girdling roots that might take a long time to clean up. So on all those jobs where we didn't find the girdling roots, we're kind of building up our bank of girdling root extraction money so that when we finally get to one that does have it, we can just take care of it for the client right there. The right way to do it would be to charge everybody $175, and then when we uncover a bunch of girdling roots, tell the client, hey, look, I know we just charged you $175 to move all the soil and cut away the ivy or the excess lawn that was piled up on the tree. But now that we've done that, we found all this other stuff, and I need to charge you another $150 to pay for the time. In my opinion, I think that leaves a bad taste in people's mouth. They might respect the professionalism and that, be happy that we brought that to their attention, but they're also going to be bummed that they have to pay more money that they weren't planning on. So I personally like the approach of knowing I'll charge everybody a little extra, and then just get it taken care of when it does present itself. Here's a really good example. This tree right here, this is a jacaranda tree. That root system is a mess. When we started that job, we couldn't see the root system at all. They had lawn piled up all the way up to the trunk of the tree. And this job was brought to us by another consulting arborist who was considering recommending the tree for removal. They didn't want to do it. It was a beautiful tree. It had a crazy lean and no visible good root flare. It was mounded a little bit, but we couldn't tell, was that mounding from roots that were getting lifted up because the tree was falling down, or was that something else? So I said, look, for us to do a root crown excavation on this tree, it's only a couple $100. Let's get that done and then make the decision afterwards. And so that's what we did. We came in, we were doing a bunch of pruning there, so we were able to do it for a pretty affordable price. And once we did that, we found giant support roots on the back side of the lean, which is exactly what we wanted to find. There were a few other things, a few issues, but what we found ultimately led us to make the decision to preserve the tree. This is basic work that can be done with the air spade with very little training. This is something that I feel comfortable taking one of our new employees who aren't a certified arborist and say, hey, new guy, we want you to take this gun, point it there and move all the soil away. And then one of our arborists are gonna come and look at it with you and make a determination about what we're gonna do next. So let's take a break right there, and we're gonna go to some questions. And I think, Jake, you're gonna say the questions out loud so everyone can hear them. Okay, good.
I got them for you, Nick. All right, Sean wants to know how long you would allow to go with a new service before evaluating the quality or cost benefit.
Okay, that's a really good question. How do we figure out how long we're going to go with it? So there's the quality benefit and there is the cost benefit. The cost benefit, you can figure that out right away. And thanks, Sean, by the way, this is a really good question. After the very first job, you can look at it and go, okay, I thought it was going to take an hour and a half, and it actually took an hour and 12 minutes. Okay, that's super cool. I didn't realize I was going to have to make that extra trip to Home Depot to get that other tool that I didn't think about. So I did lose money on this job. So if I add another $50 next time, that'll cover it. And so within 1 or 2 jobs, you can know the cost benefit. It might take longer with something like trunk injections, where you do need to do training, buy possibly expensive chemicals, and then a $1,500 trunk injection kit. So you might have to let that run for 6 months before you look at it. Obviously, don't let yourself go broke from it. But I think that the cost benefit can be figured out really quick. The quality can be harder. Some services like cabling a tree, when you're done, you can stand back and go, well, it's cabled and I got $300 for doing it. I feel pretty good about that. We're good to go. Something like vertical mulching, where we'll get it more into detail about that. There's no benefit the next day at all whatsoever. It takes a while for the oxygen, the nutrients and everything to get into the soil, get into the roots of the tree, get up to the canopy and actually do anything. So you have to give yourself and your clients and your trees the time to let all that run its course. So with something like vertical mulching, I would say just keep doing it, because there are so many people doing it. And later on down the line, we have trees that we've done it and we've looked at it a year or 2 later and we're like, wow, look at that thing. It looks amazing right now. And you kind of have to take a leap of faith on something like that. So look at the numbers and look at the trees, and let your numbers and the trees in your area guide you. Jake, what's the next question?
How often do you review changing chemicals with services, and how do you address such with current clients? This viewer has had mixed results trying to recommend changing in the past and would love to hear your take on it.
Yeah, this is a good point. Clients don't like change. I have a really good example. In our company, we've made the decision not to use imidacloprid anymore. And I won't go into detail about that. You can email me, message me directly about why that is. But we have clients calling us saying, hey, it's been a year, we want to do this again. And we have to tell them, oh yeah, we're not doing that anymore. And they're kind of, I won't say they're flipping out, but they're borderline flipping out. They're not happy about it. And no matter the reason, what it boils down to is you're the professional, and you have to tell them the reason why. And the truth could be that I was using the wrong product before. I shouldn't have been using that at all. And even though you liked it, this one is better. Now you can present that to them in a different way. I went to a conference and I learned that even though this works, this other stuff works better, or it works just as well, and I can provide it to you for a better price, or whatever the reason is. But you have to know your reason. You have to be confident and right, and then remind them that you're the professional. And if they want to stick to what they're used to, you make that decision if you're going to flex and do what they want, knowing that maybe doing something is better than nothing, or if you want to professionally and politely tell them, I understand where you're coming from, And I really think we should stick with this new product. I know that there are other people in our market, that in our county, that can do it. I hope you don't mind if I recommend that you give one of them a call, and do give me a call if you need something else. I think that's the approach that I would take. But when we make a decision to make a change, we're kind of hard ass about it. We stick to it, and we don't want our clients to tell us what to do. They're not the arborist. Sometimes they are the arborist. It depends, but usually we're the most professional in the situation.
Needling.
Okay, deneedling. What is deneedling?
And how do you sell it?
I will say, Joseph, let me not go too much into detail, because I'm going to show you in a video in a little bit. Excuse me. I'm going to show you what that is. And but what I'll say is, we've learned that there are diseases that affect some trees here, because needles, pine needles or Italian cypress needles, will build up inside the canopy of the tree, and it creates a good environment for bacteria, fungus, or insects like spider mites, for example, to live in there. So what we're doing is going into the tree and intentionally, oftentimes by hand, pulling out the old dead needles that aren't, for whatever reason, falling out of the tree. So that's what it is. I'll show you what it looks like a little bit. In fact, hold on one second. We're going to show you in Italian cypress what it looks like. We deal with it a lot in Japanese black pines, Pinus thunbergii, if you're following along at home. And in our market, the Japanese black pines, they hold on to their dead needles for a really long time, and spider mites love to live in those dead needles. And so we could come and spray, and you'll take care of the spider mites that are on that tree at that minute, but you're leaving behind a very spider mite friendly habitat. And next month you'll have more spider mites, or next season you'll have more spider mites. So for an additional cost, instead of spraying, or maybe along with, we will go up, send our arborists up into the tree, and just have them start pulling out clusters and clusters of dead needles. And when we do it, it's a really neat thing, because we're creating something that's better for the tree. We're increasing airflow in the canopy, which is always good. We're opening up more sunlight into the canopy, which encourages new growth. So it's good for the trees. We're making money, which is good for our company. We're not doing backbreaking work, which is good for our employees, even though I will say it's annoying. And you can ask any of my guys, and if they have to deneedle a Japanese black pine, they're like, ugh. It's a very, let's say it's a very zen activity. But the other really good thing about it is it looks amazing when we're done. And the clients come out, and even though they might not fully understand the science behind why we're doing it, they look at it and they're like, oh my God, this tree looks so good. They're so happy that they spent the money on it, because there's that immediate beauty gratification that is worth a lot, at least here in Hollywood where I work. But anyone can look at it and go, wow, if I would have known it was going to look that good, I would have paid for this just for the aesthetic benefit alone. So that's what it is. We'll go more into detail later. Jake, anything else? Keep them coming.
Yeah, a couple questions. This one real quick. Do you spray for spider monkeys at all? Says Wyatt.
Oh, I can't. Jake, can you repeat the question? I can't quite hear you.
Do you spray for spider monkeys at all?
Yes, we use water, and when we spray them, they come to play with the water. Yeah, I'm going to assume that he meant spider mites, and we have done that.
I think he did.
Yeah, maybe he's using Siri. We occasionally will spray for spider mites. As a company, we try to avoid spraying anything, because we're in such a compact, heavily populated, dense urban area. There's a lot of overcast that will come from any spraying that we do. So we do, in our company, we do whatever we can to avoid spraying, but we have done it, and if I can see a situation where it makes sense, we'll do it again. But we've also learned that blasts of water and a really good deneedling are almost as good as using chemicals. What else?
And Ryan wants to know, would you use an air spade to spray off pinion scale eggs instead of water, or could it damage the bark too much?
I'm going to say, as an arborist, I don't know. I don't know that specific insect, but I can say that I have used it on magnolia scale. And if there's any comparison, magnolia scale will blast right off with the air spade and doesn't damage the bark. You will get some loose pieces of bark that will fly off, but nothing that you look at it afterwards and go, oh God, I shouldn't have done that. It's the kind of stuff that, like, if you flicked it like that with that much pressure, the bark would have fallen off anyways. And also we've noticed that when I've used it on scale, you can stand a lot further back and it will still work. So I'd say go try it. If you have an air spade, you have access to one, give it a shot, stand far away and get closer and closer. And if you notice bad things starting to happen, then say, you know what, that's not going to work. But my guess is if you're doing it with high pressure water, really high pressure water, then it can handle the air. You might just be doing it with a water hose with your thumb over it, and the pressure that the air spade generates is way higher than that. So test it out. You're not going to hurt the tree if you start far away and work closer to it.
Okay. Matt asks, basically that he runs into some issues sometimes where a certain number of cables were sold, and once in the tree, you run into additional needs.
Matt, that's a really good point, and we've dealt with that as well. And I can tell you that there are a few dozen cables around LA that I've installed for free, and I deal with that the same way as I mentioned with the girdling roots, where we charge every cable like $5 extra. Maybe it happens once or twice a year, but if we're putting 4 cables in a tree, I might bump that price up a little bit, knowing that if I'm looking at it from the ground and it looks like it's 4, it might actually need 5 or 6. I've had my arborists tell me, hey, just so you know, we put another cable in there. And I'm like, all right. And I'm not going to charge the client for that, because I think it's kind of a jerk move to be like, hey, BT dubs, we threw in another cable up there, I need $350 extra. I look at that as a cost of doing business. You could do the 4, come down at lunch and tell them, hey, I really think we do need another one. And they might say, okay, great, let's go ahead and do it. Or you might preempt it by saying, you know, we were charging you $350 each. I'm just going to charge you $250 because we're already here. If you're cool with that, I'd love to do it. I might present it that way, and then if they say, ugh, this is really getting to be a lot of money, I might say, you know what? You've been really cool. We're just going to do it for you, because I don't want the liability of knowing that my arborist identified another cable that needs to be done, and I said, screw it, they don't got the money, they don't get the cable. So that's the approach that I would take. If it's a lot of cables, then tell them, look, it looked different from the ground, and I can't afford to do this all for you for the same price, and you have to renegotiate that one.
Wyatt wants to know, why not charge by the hour for root work?
Oh, that's a really good question. And to be honest, you can charge by the hour. I know other people that do it, and they say that it works well. We have found that in our service area, clients hate when we charge, or the whole situation doesn't work pretty when we charge by the hour. We've done things by the hour, and then we'll have a client say, well, I saw the guy on his phone for like 3 minutes because he was on his phone looking at Jobber to look at the work order, or maybe he was texting the office to tell them something about the job. For me personally, we've seen that it creates friction. And so personally, I don't like doing that. If your clients are cool with it, go for it, by all means. That is really the best way to do it. And that's honestly what I'm doing, but I'm doing it preemptively, predicting how many hours I.
Hi,
Okay.
I'm Royer, head party animal at TreeStuff.com. I'm here to make sure that everyone knows about our TreeStuff party program. Each month, volunteer arborists from different regions host free recreational climbing events powered by TreeStuff.com, giving local arborists a chance to meet, hang out, climb, and try out some cool gear in the trees. Every TreeStuff party is 100% free, so there's no reason to not bring your family, friends, co-workers, and acquaintances. Check our Facebook events page to learn about upcoming TreeStuff parties, and sign up to be notified when there's a new TreeStuff party in your neck of the woods at treestuff.com/parties. It's all about seeing friends, making new friends, and having fun in the trees. I hope you can make it to a party soon.
Have you heard about geocaching? Like geocaching, it's a real-world hunt using GPS coordinates to find the geocache plaque. Share your adventure on social media and you can win some sweet prizes. See who else has visited the cache in the digital logbook and have a blast. There are more than 85 amazing geocache locations in 15 different countries to satisfy your thirst for adventure. Head to treestuff.com/cache to get started. Then grab your gear, find the tree, climb it, and claim victory.
It was late in the day, sun's out, and I was getting complacent. I went to make my cut, and towards the end, I didn't want it to roll into the water. And towards the end of the cut, I took one hand off the saw, put it on top of the stump. There was a knot on the back side of the wood, and the tip of the bar caught it. The way it kicked, it drove the saw right into where my main artery, the femoral artery is right there. And it's probably saved my life. Pretty scary. It's nice to be able to rely on quality PPE. The pants are amazing. They're breathable, comfortable, they're form-fitting. I've worn all types of pants, and these are by far my favorite. Regardless of how good you think you are, accidents happen. It's worth $200. Buy the chainsaw pants. It might save your life,
Hi, I'm Kil.
Okay, all right, I think you guys can all hear me right now. Okay, all right, we're going. Thank you very much for your patience. We have, I think what we're doing is a really phenomenal thing. I have 1, 2, 3 computers and a phone that are being used to do all this. Plus we have guys in Indiana that are actually running it all using a couple more computers. So it's kind of crazy what all goes into this. So thank you for sticking through with it. Jake, let's hit a couple more questions. We definitely have the time for it.
Do you offer penetrometer or bulk density testing to determine the soil compaction levels?
Yeah.
You offer proof and testing results to the customer that there is compaction?
Yeah. Okay, that's a really good question, and I will say yes and no. I use a soil probe that it's not a penetrometer. It's just a metal stick that I poke in the ground, and I'm the penetrometer. I'm feeling how hard it feels. But that might sound like, ooh, this guy's shady. He's just making it up as he goes. I guarantee to you, if you come to Los Angeles, almost, I'm going to say 99% of all the soil in every yard is extremely compacted. I don't need a soil probe to tell you your soil is compacted here in Los Angeles. So I don't invest in it, but what I do is I will hand my soil probe to someone and say, take this, poke it into the ground. And chances are they won't even be able to penetrate a 1/4-inch diameter steel rod into the ground. And as an arborist, I look at the tree like, how are you even living in soil that's so hard I can't even push the soil probe with all my weight? I cannot push the soil probe into the ground. Bulk density testing we only do every once in a while. We don't do it. We take soil samples and send them to the lab and let them tell us what we're dealing with. When we do lab samples, we do share that with the client. We'll talk about that a little more when we get into the vertical mulching part of the air spade work. But the soil probe is a huge part of how I sell the vertical mulching part of things. So you should have one. And if you live in a part of the country with normal soil, I think would be very well suited to having a soil probe with a penetrometer built into it so that you can show people the numbers. They can see it right then and there. What other questions do we have?
One more question. Trevor wants to know, how do you bid your jobs?
Trevor, I think you have to go back to the beginning where we talked about how I price it.
Yeah, that's in part one.
Yeah, exactly. That's in part one. It's just a few slides in. So rewatch the video, but I'm going to summarize it for you here. I take the time and materials, and then I add a premium for the risk factor. If it's a big, scary removal that we can do fast, I'm not going to do it cheap, even though we can do it fast. I'm adding a risk premium onto it. And then I'll add a professionalism premium. If it's something that only I can do, you're going to have to pay for that. So I'm not going to do it cheap, even though it's kind of fast. And Jake, I did see one question that scrolled by. Someone was asking about the difference between doing a crown reduction versus cabling the tree. And I think that's a really good topic. So let me I don't remember who asked it, but I will say that is an approach. It's very fair. It's a very sound approach. And there are a lot of people that are very anti-cabling, and that's the approach that they tend to take. There are pros and cons to both approaches. Neither is perfect. I would say that you are taking a huge hit to the tree. Thank you, Karen was the one that asked that question. You're taking the living growth out of the tree, which could have a negative impact on the health of the tree. I live in an urban area where a lot of the trees are extremely stressed. Pruning can add additional stress that could cause the tree to die. So one of our rules, I think, that we follow here in our company is to prune only when necessary, prune as a last resort. And also, oftentimes the pruning costs a lot more. I might charge someone $800 to do a canopy reduction when I can do a cable for $400, and the cable might last a decade where the canopy reduction has to be done every 3 years. So when I look at what's best for the tree and what's best for the client, usually that leads me to the cabling approach. You might invite me to your area and look at a certain tree and tell me, look, if we do this once, we can do it for this price and it will last this long. And I would go, you're totally right. We should not cable this tree. We should do a canopy reduction. Jake, any more good questions, or should we get back to the presentation? Okay, cool. Yep, we'll get to that. Oh, go ahead. Yep, we'll get to that. Yeah, I think let's go ahead with the presentation here.
Okay.
And I think we're going to give some really good information about that's level 2. We talked about level 1 root collar excavation. Let's get to the level 2 and level 3 stuff. Here's a quick video. Kale, can you play video number 1, just showing the root collar excavation on that jacaranda tree? This one is kind of shameless plug. We're tag teaming it with a blower just to direct the dust away from our workers. But you can see how quick those clods of dirt are coming off. There's no damage to the outer layer of the bark on the roots. And we uncovered a really beautiful, obvious looking girdling root that we were able to cut right there. So that whole root collar excavation maybe took 15 minutes. There's no way you could do that by hand in 15 minutes. So, all right, cool. Let's go to the next slide. We'll cut back to the presentation here. And Kale, you can play the second video also. I'm sorry, those are back to back here. This is Ben, one of our arborists, using a Sawzall, battery-powered Sawzall, to make a very clean, fast cut. Obviously, that was a tiny little girdling root, but it'll cut through an 8-inch diameter root. It will take a couple minutes to get through it, but with a regular chainsaw, you'll screw up the chain really fast. But with a carbide-tipped Sawzall blade, those things will last, a few hours in the soil and keep working. So. Okay, now we can go back to the presentation. Okay, so level 1, root crown excavation. Level 2, let's start really improving the health of the tree by addressing the feeder roots. The best way to do that is by what a lot of people call radial trenching. Let's look at the pattern on the right. Imagine a bird's eye view, the trunk of the tree in the middle, and you're going to use the air spade to blast trenches. And these trenches could be 4 inches wide, they could be 18 inches wide, but they're gonna radiate out away from the trunk. That's why we call it radial trenching. And then you're gonna backfill that trench with new soil, a mixture of different things. We'll talk about that in a second. The idea is to get depleted, crappy, compacted soil away from the tree and replenish it with really good soil. Think about it like you're growing a bonsai tree. Every few years, you take a bonsai tree out of the pot and you wash off all of the soil. You get it down to bare root, you prune the roots, you get brand new fresh soil, and you put it back into the same pot with brand new soil. Many trees in LA would love to have that treatment done, but if the tree's 50 feet tall and you take out all of the soil, the tree's gonna fall over. So what we do is you make these trenches spaced out around the root zone, and you do part of the tree, and then you come back in a year or 2 or 3, and you make new trenches that are spaced between where the old trenches were. And over time, you're constantly replenishing the soil that is not getting replenished because a lot of people in our area, they are mowing their lawn every day. They're taking away the leaf clippings. The gardener's using a blower to blow away all the leaf twigs and flowers that are falling out of the tree. So that soil cycle of debris falling, breaking down and becoming mulch, and then eventually soil, and then becoming nutrients and getting absorbed by the tree, that soil cycle is broken by the way we manage our yards here in Los Angeles. These are the talking points that I share with people. I teach them about this soil cycle, and I do my hands in a little circle so they can envision the leaves fall down and then the tree takes them back up. And we've broken that, and we need to do something to put it back together. And what we're doing is putting trenches in the ground and then putting fine screened wood chips and a few other things that we'll talk about later back into the soil. Now there's a problem. When you do this, it's very noticeable. It's very stark, and I would say it doesn't look pretty. And if you ever want to come to LA and do work, you need to know that whatever you do, it has to be pretty. This is Hollywood. And a lot of people pay $10,000 for their lawn, they're not going to let you come in and blow trenches everywhere. So you can scale it down and do what's called vertical mulching, and the clients here aren't going to let you cover the whole root zone with mulch. That would be the best option. Since we can't do that, and since we can't do the radial trenching, we will space out little holes all under the root zone of the tree, as far out, even beyond the drip line if possible, spaced as closely as possible. Those holes are a little bit wider than the diameter of the air spade itself. We point the air spade straight at the ground and point it straight in. It takes you about 10 seconds to maybe 30 seconds to make a hole. And then our guys are crawling around on their hands and knees with little scoopers and filling up every individual hole with the ingredients that we're putting back into the soil. Those ingredients are sometimes a concoction that I'm determining, and sometimes it's given to us by a soil test, and the soil test will recommend certain levels of certain things, and we'll incorporate that into it. This isn't anywhere as effective as radial trenching, but it's way more effective than doing nothing. The good thing for Hollywood is that at the end, you see little brown patches all over the whole yard, but in just a week or two, the lawn will grow right back over it and they can't see anything at all. So they can continue having a beautiful looking lawn. We've done something phenomenal to open up the soil, that extremely compacted soil, so that oxygen, water, and nutrients can get down to the feeder roots of the tree. Let's go ahead to the next slide here. So why the heck are we doing this? We're reducing soil compaction, and we're reducing it sometimes not by treating everything, but just by reducing it in the areas where we've treated. There is a thought that you're alleviating pressure throughout the whole root zone by taking out some of the compacted soil. I think that effect is less than perfect, but where you put that hole, or if you have clients that are really pro-tree and could care less about their lawn and will let you put in full trenches, you will have instant impact on making the soil more an oxygen-friendly and a microorganism-friendly environment that will increase the overall health of the trees. We have yards in Los Angeles that you can pour water on and the water will not go in. Vertical mulching helps us to open up pathways for water to start to get in to water these drought-stressed trees. The nutrients we'll look at in a moment here. I do want to say, looking at the bottom of the screen, consider soil testing. It might be essential. Technically, you are fertilizing the tree, which means you should be adding a cost for sending out a soil test for every tree that you do this to. We've noticed trends in the soil reports that we get back, and we start incorporating the trends that we're seeing. And if we're unsure, we could do this with just fine screened mulch, and we would be still making a huge impact, because in our environment where we have tons of compacted soil, I know that the two most important ingredients are, the three most important ingredients are oxygen, water, and natural material, just mulch in the soil, something that's going to break down and feed the roots. So anything that we put on top of that is a specific decision that I'm making. So here's what we're putting into it. If you look on the left, we have in the neon green bag, it's worm castings. You can Google the benefits of worm castings. It's a great nutrient source. It's natural based, so a lot of our clients really respond positively to that. And right next to it, you see a little cardboard box of kelp meal. These two specific brands, the reason we use those is most kelp meal or worm casting brands have a high level of filler in them. It's just basically wood shavings, sometimes 75 to 95% of that. These two brands, you honestly can buy them online if you wanted to. but we do buy them locally, and the kelp meal is 100% kelp meal. The worm castings is 100% worm castings. And then in the big purple bag down below is perlite. It's coarse, it's big perlite that we're adding into the mixture. That's just to help keep it aerated. The fine screened mulch that we're putting in does break down over time, and a lot of perlite would be really good. This is the mix, our basic mixture. We put it in almost every tree that we do, approximately 10 to 25% perlite, and then maybe 5% mixture of kelp meal and the worm castings, and then the rest is just fine screened mulch. And sometimes we will incorporate other things. I'm sorry. Hiding behind the perlite, there's a little brown bag there of gypsum. And if I brought you to my computer and showed you every soil report we've ever got from local soil labs, they always, always, always recommend gypsum, because our soils are so compacted here, and gypsum is good at breaking up and allowing things to move through the soil better. So we've made the decision in our company. Now we always apply gypsum. I think it's 1 pound per 1,000 square feet, but I'd have to look that up. But you can look on the bags of gypsum and it'll give you a recommended rate. And if you stay somewhere in there, you won't be harming your soil by incorporating that gypsum into it. So sometimes the soil report will recommend high levels of nitrogen or phosphorus, maybe iron, something like that, and we'll work that in. We will take the recommended rate. They typically put it in per 1,000 square feet. So I've got to sit down and do some math. If we're treating 600 square feet, we've got to figure it out. And then we have the crew divvy that out through all the holes that are in there. They're just putting it into the mixture in a big giant bucket, mixing it all together, and then using 5-gallon buckets to carry it around to each hole on their hands and knees. And they pour it in there, and they use what we call a dibble stick, which is just a broken rake handle that we've cut off smooth, and you use that to poke the mixture down into the holes. That's all it is. It's a phenomenal treatment that we can provide, and we've had really good results. Sometimes fully bringing trees back. All right, so root pruning. This would go in line with, I think Jake was asking about installing root barriers. Those two tend to go hand in hand. In an urban environment or anywhere where there are trees next to human-made structures, the need for or the existence of roots causing damage to trees is there. And one way you can fix that is by cutting the tree down. But when the tree goes away, the tree problem goes away, and the tree benefits go away. And this is where root pruning comes in. It's not really for the faint of heart. I would say this is level 3 stuff, because there's a huge risk involved, especially as you get closer and closer to the trunk of the tree. The more you do, the better you get at seeing how aggressive you can be with it. There are books, a really good book by Larry Costello that talks about managing the underground, managing roots underground and the impacts that they make on our infrastructure, and guiding you on how aggressive you can be. Larry Costello is an arborist out here in the Western chapter, but I know that that book is available through the National ISA or the International ISA. We've done root pruning sometimes just on the surface, because there are surface roots that are creating trip hazards. Sometimes we do it where, as an arborist, I look at it and go, this is fine. That tree is really far from your building. Don't worry, it's not going to be a problem for the next decade or more. But the neighbor is flipping out, and they don't like that they can see the surface root. So our client will pay us, because they don't want the neighbor sending their gardener in with a jackhammer or a pickaxe to cut away at the roots. So they're hiring us to do the least damaging job possible to the tree, not necessarily to protect the neighbor's house sometimes, but just to protect the relationship between the neighbor. And then you can also use it for installing utilities like landscape lighting, irrigation pipes, or root barrier, which could be used in conjunction with the root pruning. It does a phenomenal job of moving away the soil while not damaging any existing underground utilities that you might not have even known were there. And then it'll help you put things in afterwards. Okay, so there is, you know what, we can skip this slide here. Let's go to the next one. Okay, here's an example of a really horribly pruned root. This was something that a construction worker did. They were building something and that was in their way. Roots that are cut like that with jagged tools, just cut with a pickaxe, or some around here, they'll just grab it with a bobcat and like yank on it and it'll tear off. They decay more and new roots don't grow as quickly and as well. So when I walk into this situation, we will come in and just cut right behind what the workers did using a Sawzall and make nice clean cuts. And this was one of dozens of cuts. So you might not want to, you might feel like a jerk charging someone $300 just to make one cut, but sometimes there are dozens or hundreds of them, and that can really add up. So, all right, let's go to the next slide. We'll get zoomed out here. And here's a project where the folks in the blue house, that was our client. They were putting in a new driveway, and the folks in the brown house have this beautiful Chinese elm. And the two neighbors are very friendly with each other, and they both love the tree. The folks installing the driveway, the construction workers said, "You don't need an arborist, we can do all this for you." And the client said, "Look, we know they could do it, but we want you guys to do it. We trust you and we know that you'll do it right." So here's our crew. It's a 3-man crew digging a trench with the air spade. And it might look silly that we have 2 guys that are just standing there holding that debris barrier, but they're not really there holding it. With the air spade, they're moving really, really fast. So Ben, the guy in the green helmet, is probably every 10 seconds moving forward a foot, and those guys are moving the barrier with him. Let's go ahead and play, I think this is video number 3. And this is what it looks like, and we uncovered an irrigation line that we had no clue was there. It's actually feeding something else. There weren't sprinkler heads indicating to us that that's where it was. And you can see how quickly that soil is coming up, and there's roots that are in there. Okay, we're good with the video. You can come back to the presentation. And then here's an example of a root. This one was cut with, whoa, there we go. This one was cut with the Sawzall. It makes just a really, really clean cut when you have a sharp blade. We'll also use, we have the really big Felco loppers to make those cuts sometimes. There's the finished product. They've got their nice new driveway. Everything looks fine. And the end result doesn't look like we did anything, but the client knows and we know that we did as much as could be done to minimize damage to the tree. We did damage to the tree. We went in there, we made a few really big cuts, but we did it in the most tree-friendly way possible. And that's what could be done to do the best by the tree and to keep the neighbor relationship really happy, which is what we were there to do on that particular job. Here's another quick one. This is one where we've been managing this tree for a really long time, and this ash tree, there it is. The ash tree, I don't know why it's showing the previous slide. Let me go back one and then go forward again. Okay, here we go. The ash tree was pushing the retaining wall out. It's honestly pushing it out 3 or 4 inches. It's no big deal. But they got a letter from the city saying that is an illegal encroachment onto the adjacent sidewalk. You need to rectify the situation and make the wall flush again. Absolutely ridiculous. But we got paid to come in after the concrete, the paving company tore the wall down, pulled out the sidewalk, and then we sent our guys in with the air spade to blast away the face there and do a little bit of root pruning. So there's no after picture, you get the idea. So let's go to deneedling. Here's the classic example. This is a row of Italian stone pines. They're starting to get ceridium canker, and if you look inside the can, if you stick your head in there and like open it up, you just see these cankers all over the place. It looks gross. In this picture, it doesn't look that bad, but on the backside, you can see these brown patches. And what we've been doing, we noticed that the cankers build up mostly on the bottom 15 feet of the tree. So we would have our guys go in by hand and just start pulling stuff out and like shaking all the branches. It's absolutely disgusting. Dust goes everywhere. The guys just come out all brown with the dirt. And one day we were at a job where we were also doing a little root crown excavation. And one of the guys said, what if we use the air spade on this? And Tommy Masters, if you're watching this, thank you so much for giving us that idea. It's been revolutionary. We had up to this point established a price of approximately $75 to $100 per tree. Clients were happy to pay that. Sometimes they'll have a row of 30 trees, so you can run the math on that. It's decent numbers. And let's go to let's play the final video, video number 4. This is Pedro in a full Tyvek suit, and look at the amount of dust that's just falling out of this tree. It's absolutely gross. You can just see it pouring out. Tyler's in the background over there, speeding the process along. But what used to take 15, 20, 30 minutes per tree now takes 5 minutes per tree or less. We've kept that price at $75 per tree. Even though we're doing it faster, we're doing it with specialized equipment. And honestly, there aren't really other arborists in LA providing this service. Maybe there's one or two, but there aren't a lot. So they can't just call the competition. And honestly, our guys hate doing it. And I believe that we all deserve a premium for providing the service. So that, in that particular one, it was a row of about 14 or 15 Italian cypress, and it created a F-150 bed mounded full of dead needles, which was absolutely disgusting. But we got the job done, and the client was ecstatic, and she was super happy to pay that price for the service that we provided. Okay, so there are other things that can be done. If a client needs to do grade change, you can help do that in a more tree-friendly way. It can be really useful in transplanting trees to take them out and find where the roots are before you start making cuts. Sometimes we'll have soil contamination issues where we need to take the soil out and replace it with new soil to improve the health of the tree. And the air spade is really the only way to do that. You can't dig the soil out because you're also digging the roots out. So there are a lot of other things. Some I didn't mention, many I didn't mention here. Some I don't even know about yet. And if you have them, share them in the comments, message them to me, and I'm helping you make your company better, so maybe you can help me make my company better. But this gives you some of the ideas, and it helps you to see how we've taken the concepts that I talk about in creating new services and selling those new services to incorporate that service into your company to make your company more money and to make your clients' trees healthier. Okay, real quickly, let's fly through this part. I think we're getting down to the nitty-gritty here. These are all the tools that we have ready to go for air spade work. And if we flip through, this is what we take with us when we're doing root pruning, and then if we're doing a vertical mulching job, we don't need a lot of that stuff, but we do need some of the other stuff. You can see we have the dibble sticks on there. We have these lists up in our shop as like a checklist that when the guys are loading up, they can look at the wall and go, oh yeah, we need to make sure we have this. When we're doing the root crown excavation, like I said, that's level 1. And these are the only tools that you really need. Get yourself a battery-powered Sawzall and a couple Sawzall blades and a bucket to clean up your mess, and you're good to go. You will need a little bit of extra PPE. The helmet, earmuffs, and eye protection is stuff that you'll have already. This is Tyler. He's wearing, I think he has 2 sweatshirts on because rocks and stuff are pelting at him. He has his head buff pulled up all the way under his head visor, and that's helping to keep the dust and debris off of his face. You're not required to provide Tyvek suits to your crew to do this work, but we do provide them because sometimes our guys wear them. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I haven't figured out the mystery as to why sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. We always have them available so that whoever wants to wear one can wear one. You got to have gloves. I know a lot of manly men don't like to wear gloves, but the air spade itself gets really hot, so you'll need to protect yourself from that temperature. On the TreeStuff website, they're probably going to sell out because there's millions of people watching this and they're all going to go buy their air spade right now, but it's $1,500 to buy one. You will need a few other supplies, as I mentioned at the very beginning. Let's talk about the prices a little bit. A lot of these things you already have, or you can buy at Home Depot, like a big tarp to maybe collect some soil. The air spade's $1,500. I put $200 for the air compressor because you can rent them locally for cheap, but you also have to factor in going down there to get it, paying your guys to bring it back and putting in the fuel and all that. Or you can pay $20,000 and just buy one. The air hoses, you pay about $60 for a 50-foot air hose. There are really good ones that you can get on Amazon Prime. If you want the link, let me know and I'll send it to you. If you don't have one already, getting a battery-powered Sawzall, 2 batteries, a charger, and some blades will run you about $250. So if you're renting, you're looking at a total upfront cost of somewhere around $2,000. And so that means you might not make your money back on your first job, but you will make your money back. And it's one of the best purchases I've ever made. And I think, I fully believe that every arborist should have one because there's so much that you can do with it. And you won't realize until you have it sitting there how often you can use it. We started out using it once a month, and then now we're at a point where we're using it multiple times a week, and I believe we'll soon be at a point where we're using it every other day or every day. Here's the big bullet points. They protect the trees from sharp tools that would damage them. You can use it to encourage tree health and to prolong the life of that tree, and it offers a removal to tree removal. If they're gonna, it offers an alternative to tree removal. If they're gonna cut it down because the root is going close to their sewage line or whatever, you can be the tree hero to show them that there is another way. There are benefits to your company. We won't read these line by line, but I do want to point out that it is simple to use. The concept is easy. Just keep the gun moving. Don't hold it in one spot. It's more effective if you come at it from different angles and keep it moving and let them all try it out. It will make them better technicians out in the field, and it will give them another opportunity to become better arborists. Roots are challenging for arborists to work on because they're mystical and they're underground, and we understand the concepts of where they probably are going and what they probably are doing, but the reality is you don't know until you expose them. It's very common for us to hypothesize and predict where we think it's going to be, and then we start doing the work and we find crazy things underground. We use that information to help us next time. It will make you a better arborist in other aspects of the work that you do, and it will help your company. So I really think you should get one, and you won't regret it. And if you do, I'll probably buy the air spade off of you. So it's a no risk opportunity. It is not all rainbows and unicorns. The air spade is extremely noisy. It makes the neighbors angry. They're going to have to deal with it. It's extremely dusty. We do have to factor in the time for my employees to go next door and sweep off their, blow off their driveway, collect all that dirt. A lot of times we have to bring the soil back and pay to dispose of it if we can't dispose of it on site. You can damage the tree with the air spade. If you're doing vertical mulching in a drought, and you can't blast all the holes out and then come back and fill them all in. They'll be dried and shriveled up before you even get the soil in. So we have to do it production style, with one guy blasting the holes and one guy coming directly behind him to fill them back up. So for you men and women out in the field, remember that you're doing something to help the tree, so do it in a way that is as tree friendly as possible. Get a soil probe, as I mentioned, or maybe get one that can actually read out the level of pressure needed to penetrate into the soil, so you can show that information. Let the client feel what the soil probe feels like going into the soil, and water the area in advance if you can. In LA, it really, it's not feasible. It doesn't work out as well. Most customers can't really fully understand how to water a tree, so it's on me to do it, and I can't always do it. And here's what we put. If you can't read it on the screen, I'll send this to you directly. This is on every air spade job that we do. It's right on the quote, and the client is agreeing to do the work knowing that it's dusty and dirty and that we're going to do our best to clean it up, but we're not coming in the house to dust off their china cabinet. They have to be in charge of that part and make sure they close up their windows. Excuse me? I think that is everything that I have. We're going to stop. I think we're going to stop right there. We have gone through a lot of stuff today, and I fully believe that this presentation that I gave about air spade work, this last 45 minutes or so, we could do the exact same thing, covering all the same topics about injections, cabling. I could talk for 45 minutes on de-needling, and you guys would look at it and go, okay, that's crazy, but it actually might work. And you would start pulling those pieces and incorporating those concepts into your own company. Even if you don't ever do any air spade work, you will be able to benefit and use these techniques. The concept of selling to improve your companies and improve the tree is, I think, amazing information, and just good to get your brain spinning, get your wheels spinning on that topic. I think we'll turn it back over to Jake in a second here. We do have one more coming up in a few months. I have some ideas about what we'll talk about there. After the first presentation that we did, we got so much feedback through Facebook messages, Instagram messages, direct text messages, emails. It was awesome. I've done a lot of webinars, and a lot of people said that that was the best one they've ever watched. I want to thank you guys for your positive feedback. It does make it more fun for me to know that you guys are really enthusiastic about it. So even if you don't believe it, could you just tell me that this one was even better than the first one? And it'll make me more excited to do the next one. But we love the questions, and I think we responded to every single question that we got. We used some of the questions to incorporate into this presentation, and I would love to do the same sort of thing for our third presentation. So thank you guys very much. Jake, I'll turn it back to you, and I'll stay on in case there are any other questions for me. Oh, round of applause, yay!
Jason Dudek says he wants to know what your thoughts are on pressure washing trees, and he's also coming up with the idea of a TreeStuff Araya air spade class in Indianapolis.
Oh, what are Nick's thoughts on pressure washing trees? Jason Dudek, get out of here with that. I think anyone that wants to do it better do a little bit of homework first.
He's also thinking that a TreeStuff Araya air spade class in Indianapolis would be a good idea.
Honestly, Spade hands-on webinar, hands-on training would be phenomenal. And I think a lot of people would benefit from that, and I would love, love, love to do it. So what I will say, Jason, on this topic is you get lots of people to pressure TreeStuff enough and Cheryl to know that it's worth it to pay them to fly me or someone else to their headquarters to talk about all the things that could be done. And that will increase the likelihood of it happening.
Very good.
Yeah.
Michael wants to know how deep you can or should go when breaking up compacted soil.
The answer is yes. We go as deep as we can. I'm going to say when we're talking about breaking up the compacted soil, as an arborist, you have a pretty good idea of where the feeder roots are, where most of them are, and it tends to be in the top 12 to 24 inches of soil.
Toss to me when you're done.
Okay, so since we know that most of the feeder roots are in that top 12 to 24 inches, that is how far we go. I should say that in LA, sometimes the Spade isn't tough enough, so we have a 24-inch long soil auger with a carbide tip that we will, if we can't get the Spade in, we will drill in with the Milwaukee whole hog drill, which is a slow speed drill with high torque, and it will get into anything. It sucks when we have to use it, but that's what we do. We aim for that top 12 to 24 inches. If we are getting the Spade in, we instruct our guys to go as deep as the Spade will let you, and sometimes they're burying that barrel all the way into the soil. Sometimes it's only going in 16 inches. We do what we can. We do as much as we can to improve the tree. I think that's our final question. If you do think of more questions, or if you're watching this later, you're not watching it live, message me directly. We'll try to get back to all of your answers. I want to thank you guys so much for the opportunity to do this. I'm very passionate about helping other arborists become better arborists. And Jake, I'll turn it back to you.
And remember, it takes 6 to 8 weeks for the CEUs to be reflected on your account. Now, coming up 3 weeks from today, we'll have another TreeStuff educational webinar you will not want to miss. Pruning for Performance and Prevention with Lindsay Purcell. It'll be held on the 27th from 6 to 8 p.m. on our Facebook page. Now, Purcell is an urban forestry specialist at Purdue University and an ISA board-certified master arborist. Pruning to improve performance and prevent failure should be a major concern for every arborist, said Purcell. The webinar will provide details on pruning objectives to help arborists determine the best strategies for promoting sustainable growth consistent with current standards. ISA CEUs will be available for that webinar as well, so you don't want to miss that. And don't forget, Jambo 6 will be held here in Indianapolis from July 13th to the 15th. You want to check out our events page on Facebook for all of our upcoming events. Thanks again to Nick Araya, and thanks to Kale, who's running the booth, and thanks to Nick and Carson and all of their hard work. And thank you for your continued support for the TreeStuff educational webinar. We really appreciate it. Stay safe, everyone, and we'll see you soon.